and you're good to go.
Brilliant. Thanks, Beth. So hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us at another of our Plan C webinars and online discussions. Thanks so much for signing up and all of your interest so far. It's lovely to see all of your faces and from all over the world, which is great. Today's session is going to be quite interactive. Beth is fantastic. She's going to be talking about work-life balance, which, as we all know, during this time has been a challenge for many of us. So yeah, I'm really excited to just introduce you to Beth and to the session, and I hope that you find it helpful. And do stay in touch with us if you want to see what's coming up. We have sessions 2 to 3 times a week. They're all free, so just head over to our website and see what else is on the schedule. Otherwise, I will hand you over to Beth, and I hope you enjoy.
That's great. Thank you so much, Ruby, for that introduction. And it's great to see some familiar faces and some new ones. And it's so nice to see people from like all over and to see your different backgrounds. And I also want to let you know that the kids are welcome. So are pets, cats and dogs. You might hear mine at one point. And if you need to, you can always mute yourself and then join us. So I'm going to be sort of moving back and forth between share desktop, and we're going to be doing a lot of, I'm going to have you in the Zoom breakout rooms. And so today's agenda is we're going to start with an icebreaker. I'm going to present for a bit. I'm going to break you into small groups using the Zoom breakout rooms. If you haven't experienced it, it looks very similar to what you see now, except for you'll be in a room with just a few other people and you'll have time for a more intimate conversation. And we'll spend the last bit of it with Q&A and discussions. I also wanted to let you know that in addition to the recording, the slides will be available at that URL that's at the bottom of my screen there, along with a lot of tip sheets and different additional things to read. So, so I'm going to stop sharing for just one moment and just check to see if there's anyone else in the waiting room, and I'm just letting them in as we go. And so the first thing I'd like to do, some of you have already introduced yourselves in the chat. If you haven't had a chance to do that, you can, we're not going to have everybody do this verbally because you'll have a chance to connect with each other in small groups. But if you could just type in your name, your organization, and where you're coming in from, what country, you can say what country externally and what room you're in your house. I'm in my kitchen / living room. It's a big open space. And I'm calling it my new co-working / college dormitory because I have 2 college kids that are now home until next fall, who have been also studying alongside my husband and I, who are also working, and our dog. So one little trick that you can do with Zoom is that you can actually, if you put your mouse cursor over your profile and you go to the top right, you see the ... You can click on that and a menu pops down and you see rename, and you can also put additional information in there, and it's a good place to put, I like to put pronouns in. That's one thing, or you can put location, but it's another way to introduce yourself. Great, and I'm just checking. I think everybody is here now. So, so the first thing I will do is I'd like to do a poll, and hopefully it's going to work. Lately, I've had a couple of little technical problems with Zoom, but we're going to just hold our breath. If not, we'll do it in an alternate way. But I want to get a sense of how present you are at this meeting. You know, are you mindful or is your mind full? And the scale is 1 to 5, and 1 is I have 10 tabs open, another meeting to hop to in 15 minutes, the dog is barking, and something slammed in the next room where my kid is, ... So that's a 1. And then you could have a 2, 3, 4, 5. And the 5 is I'm totally with you. This video chat is like a Zen meditation. So hopefully you can see the poll. Yes. If you can see the poll, give me a thumbs up. Yes. Let me know where you are on the scale of kind of presence right now. Just give it a few more seconds. Almost everyone's voted. Okay, let's share it. Okay, so you should be able to see the results. Yes, I never know sometimes. It says sharing, but then sometimes I get in the chat. I can't see the poll, but it seems like we have a little bit of a bell curve with most folks skewed in the middle or towards the higher end of presence. If you're feeling distracted or not present, I would just invite you to think about what you need to do for yourself in this moment to become more present. And one thing that I have been doing with a lot of meetings lately is starting with a moment of silence. And I'm actually using something called the Insight Timer. It's a meditation app. It's both on the iPhone and the Android platform. And it's just like having a meditation bell. So I'm going to start it and just give us a minute to do some breathing. Great. Sometimes we just need a little bit of a transition to kind of move into focus and presence in a meeting. And I found that during these kind of difficult times, I have just been starting meetings with a moment of quiet meditation. So I'm going to move on to a presentation, to some tips on maintaining work-life balance and personal resilience in an age of pandemics. And let's see. And feel free to comment and ask questions in the chat. I'm not going to be presenting the whole time. This is just to get us started. And I'm just going to give you some 8 tips on how to keep calm and fundraise in an age of anxiety. So the first tip is about remembering the basics, and this is sleep, nutrition, and exercise. And if you can focus on these, and I know it's difficult, it helps strengthen your immune system, and it will help you feel better. So I'm a big fan of Fitbit. I don't know if any of you wear Fitbits, but I have made a commitment to continue to get my daily steps in. And I shoot for 10,000, but these days, if I get outside at least once a day and walk around the block, I feel like I can celebrate. Because the blessing, at least in this shelter in place, I don't know how many of you are under orders of quarantine, but we are in the US, we're still allowed to at least go outside in our neighborhoods and walk as long as we keep 6 feet distance from other people. And while I've wanted to eat all the ice cream and pasta and potato chips and all the unhealthy kinds of things that I could eat to make me feel better, I'm trying to avoid that and just keep healthy food on my plate. Again, that helps with maintaining focus and reducing anxiety. And really importantly is getting enough sleep. And I have to admit, when this crisis first started, I had what I call plague-induced insomnia, and I had trouble sleeping, and I've been using something called the Sleep With Me podcast, which helps you with your insomnia, and I've had a way better time with that. So focus on the basics first. The second is to, we have to practice social distancing, also practice mental distancing. When this crisis started happening, the first thing I did was to focus on the news 24/7, and I obsessed about every potential bad scenario that could happen to me or my family or my neighbors, and that was really stressful because the news was bad, but I kept on shooting myself with it. I kept on shooting another arrow of all this bad news. Even I'd read something and then I'd worry about it. So I put myself on a news diet by only consuming an hour of news a day. To keep myself informed, to keep my family and my neighbors and my community safe. But I didn't feel like it was healthy for my mental health or for those around me to focus on it nonstop. I think it's also important to practice, we've been told to wash our hands and to practice hygiene. We have to practice information hygiene. So I would try to consume news only from trusted and vetted sources, especially when it comes to medical information, because there's a lot of misinformation out there that can cause a lot of anxiety. And my final tip around practicing mental distancing is to have COVID-free zones. My husband and I are now working at home, and we have an agreement that we take a walk once a day, and we don't talk about the virus. It's a chance to forget about it. The third tip is about socializing at a distance, okay? So we keep social distances, but we can also use these technologies to create virtual opportunities to socialize with each other. Zoom doesn't have to be all work all the time. And what I've been doing on my walks is I've been using FaceTime on my iPhone, and I've been doing virtual walks with other people, and I get a chance to see their dogs or their neighborhood, and a chance to go outside and just have a walk and talk. And I've been doing that with check-ins. What you see here is an example of a Zoom virtual happy hour that TechSoup has started hosting for their staff. And what they do is they do different themes. This was the hat theme, so everybody had to show up wearing a silly hat. And they get to take turns doing a show and tell, and they just have a lot of fun. I've seen nonprofits do virtual birthday parties on Zoom, happy hours, and virtual coffee hours. And it doesn't have to be just Zoom. You can also do this on Slack. I've seen more and more, if you're using Slack already, setting up a channel that's like the water cooler or the happy hour. Another group I'm working with, we're sharing tips on what we're doing for our own well-being. Next is embracing new workplace norms for meetings, and I've already said this at the beginning. We're not just working at home, we're working at home during a global health crisis, and we're not only working, but we're also trying to juggle kids, pets, the kind of novelty or newness of working at home. And so it's okay, we have to give ourselves some slack. And so we've been saying kids are welcome. If the kid is crying or needs attention, if it's a young child, definitely, mute yourself. Don't not show up, and don't feel additional stress because of that. In addition, we're sitting in front of the computer quite a bit these days. So it's really good to make stretching at meetings, either whether you do it yourself in between meetings to just get up and stretch, but also maybe doing, here's a pro tip, and I'm going to actually stop out of share, and I'm going to encourage folks, if you're not on camera, to come on camera. We don't judge about hair. Take a look at mine. I haven't had my hair cut or done in 6 weeks now, and you're just a few we're just a little bit away from knowing my true hair color, and that's okay. So if you can put yourself on camera, we're going to do just a stretching game that you can also do with your team if you're using Zoom. And so I'm going to model this by, everybody has to copy my stretch, okay? So just start doing it, okay? And then somebody else change the stretch, and then everybody else try to copy it. All right, And then just copy somebody else's stretch. You don't have to copy mine. I'm just looking for somebody else. Oh, look at this. We're all in sync. This is great. Okay. So just a few minutes of stretching. This, I love this. Okay. I'm going to switch it. Oh, I see someone else. I see one up. That's great. All right. So just a few minutes of stretching gets blood flowing to the brain and gets us off of that unhealthy thing of sitting on our rear ends. Let's see, I'm gonna share again, pop back to the presentation. And by the way, I don't know if any of you have done this. I did this. I did an exercise class on Zoom, and I thought it was gonna be terrible, but it was actually a lot of fun. I've done exercise, I've gone to my faith-based meeting, I've done mindfulness, I've done a calligraphy class. So there's a lot we can do that we can make use of this technology to kind of maintain connection. The other thing is to focus on positive thoughts. It's very easy to get in a negative cycle of this is the world is ending, this, you know, all of us are in kind of a grieving process, because we've lost what is our normal routine. So if we're feeling overwhelmed or we're feeling angry or just a little unsettled, that's normal, and that can easily escalate into feeling that, you know, it's never going to change. But we have to think positive thoughts. And one way to do that is to practice gratitude. Think about, like, what am I grateful for today? You know, were you able to get a food delivery? I was like thinking yesterday, we got a food delivery and we were just so grateful to have some fresh fruit in the house. And we know that the science of gratitude, it's proven that if we are grateful and we practice it ourselves or we practice it with other people, it can have a great impact on our well-being. So every morning I also try to ask myself questions, and these are things that you can also do with your group as a check-in. I try, and they're more positive. I ask myself, how will I get outside today? What's the one thing today that made me laugh? What beauty am I creating or connecting with today? So focus on positive thoughts. The other is to try to incorporate quiet time into your workday. And, quiet time really, it restores your nervous system, it replenishes your energy and concentration, it facilitates clear thinking, it quiets those negative thoughts, and it really improves your productivity. Now, I have been working online and virtually for 30 years, and I'm used to all of this, but I would say that once this started, the pandemic started, I've never had so many back-to-back Zoom meetings, and this has led to something called Zoom overload, which is actually a thing. We're not used to having and staring at a screen for so long, and so I think it's really important to try to avoid Zoom overload. And one of the things that you can do is not have your meetings scheduled like this, but leave time in between. Maybe have 30-minute meetings or 40-minute meetings, and also try to focus on work that can be done asynchronously, so that you're not all meeting in real time to make decisions, but there's things that can be decided when people get to it. And then when you come together, your meetings can be shorter. So the pro tip here from a veteran person who I've been working in my pajamas for 30 years. One of the things that I have done since I have been working remotely is that I have set a regular routine. Even though I might be commuting from my bedroom to the kitchen, I still get up, I take a shower, I get dressed as if I'm going to work, and I have a regular schedule. And another thing, because now my workplace is in the middle of my living room, I have a desk here, but I shut it down at the end of the day. So because the boundaries between work time and home time now are completely blurred, and you can get into a cycle of just working all the time, which is not good for your mental health. And it's probably not good for your family either. So I have a closing down ritual. I'm stopping at the end of the day. I'm closing my computer down. I may make my list of what I have to attend to tomorrow, but I'm done. The next tip is to tend and friend. Okay, so just by checking in and caring for other people, you can help reduce your own stress. What you're seeing on the left is an example of a group of nonprofit leaders, women leaders. Actually, we started a chain letter saying on Facebook, who would like to receive a personal letter from a personal note from me? I got some great new stationery, DM me your address. And so we've written a note to that person and then asked that person to move it forward. So it's been actually really nice to get handwritten letters from colleagues in the mail. And I've seen lots of instances like this where you elderly are great risk for COVID-19, and people helping their neighbors, being willing to do grocery shopping if you're able to. So another question to ask yourself every day is, who will I check in on? What can I do for others? We're all in this together. One thing that our family did is that we adopted a senior rescue dog, and that's Tigger. And those are my kids and my husband, and he's added a great lot of joy to our family. I was the one who never wanted the dog because it's a lot to take care of, and they might ruin the house or whatever. But it's just been wonderful. And so there's Tigger. He's age 14. He came to us on anti-anxiety medications, and I was tempted to steal some, but I didn't need to because the dog was so great, and also because the dogs. It was really interesting is that the rescue shelter, set up a whole safe handoff process. So we showed up, we were all wearing masks. The person from the shelter was wearing a mask. The dog wasn't wearing a mask, and they had a 6-foot leash, and they handed them off. And it was really great to be able to help out the animal shelter, but also bring a little joy to our family. And so my last tip is about, there's a phrase called eat a rainbow every day. And my good friend, John Hyden, who passed away from an aggressive form of cancer that he fought for 3 years. And he wrote a book called Donor Care, just published. I suggest you all get a copy. One of the ways that he fought his deadly cancer every day was that every day he asked himself, what rainbow am I going to eat? So he was talking about eating healthy foods and fruits, a rainbow of fruits and vegetables. But in our neighborhood, the families with young kids have taken to getting colored chalk and chalking up the sidewalks and coloring rainbows on it and messages of hope. And then what I see is other families walking around and they're trying to count the rainbows in their communities and in the sidewalks. So I think we all need to think about the rainbows, yes, yet to come from this horrible nightmare. And I'm not diminishing how awful it is, but I really think that we need to keep that optimistic view. So I'm just going to peek at the time. So one of the things that I advocate for is creating a self-care plan that will help build your personal resilience. And I have actually in the materials, and you'll get the link, a template for you to build your plan. And it's organized by different areas. The first is, what are some things you can do for yourself? What are some things you can do for others? Your environment, what can you do to make your home environment less chaotic? What can you do to get outside? Work and money, as well as your relationship with technology. So I'll share that, and when I break you into small groups, I hope that you'll begin to talk about the kinds of things you want to do for personal resilience. And now we're really talking about setting up good habits, and when you set up good habits, you don't want to try to do too many at once. And in my book, The Happy Healthy Nonprofit, I interviewed habit change experts, including BJ Fogg, who's just down the road from me at Stanford. And he talks about finding the anchor, or when in your routine you're going to start that new behavior. Make the new habit tiny. Don't say you're going to walk 5 miles every day. Say, I'm going to walk around the block at least once a day. And then when you do it, you celebrate. And so I actually took a class, that Tiny Habits, BJ Fogg at the Stanford Behavioral Laboratory, that was offering for free. And I had their link. They're still doing it. And this was, how can I start a meditation practice? So, and this is from a meditation and tiny habits coach. So the anchor or the cue can be something like, You know, after I get up in the morning, or the last step in making my bed, I will, and this is the tiny meditation behavior, I'll take 3 breaths, I'll sit down and pause, I'll put my hand over my heart, I'll think of one thing I'm grateful for. And then once you do it, you kind of celebrate. You say, yay, me. And so I have been actually practicing this, trying to put tiny habits of personal resilience into my life every day during this pandemic. And hopefully I'll continue to do this once we get out of this at the other end. So I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. And before we go into small groups, I'd like to just check in with Ruby to see if there were any questions. And you might want to, yeah, sure.
See. I think you're all good.
Great. Okay. So the first thing I'd like folks to do is to give yourself a moment of quiet and think about, you can jot this down, you know, on a pen, if maybe you have paper by your desk or a pen. I love pens, so I have many pens, many notebooks on my desk, and just reflect for a moment about, you know, what ideas that resonated. You might have some questions. Maybe you're already doing some things to keep calm during this crisis, or thinking about what is something new you want to start to be able to boost your personal resilience and calm. So just give a moment of quiet reflection. It helps to write it down. Great. And I see there are some questions. We're going to take questions in a little bit, so make sure you have your questions. We're going to hold those for, we'll have 15 minutes at the end to answer a lot of questions. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to use the breakout feature. And what happens with that is I'm going to put you into breakout rooms on Zoom. And what that means is that you're going to see an interface just like this. But you're going to be with 1 or 2 other people, or maybe 3. You're going to be with 2 or 3 other people. Here, I'm doing this now. And I want you to, when you get into the breakout room, you know, introduce yourselves. And I'm typing this, you want to introduce yourselves and what are some ideas for personal resilience that you might do, and what questions do you have? So what we're going to do is, I don't know if you've ever been in a workshop where they do share pairs and they have people buddy up and discuss the presentations. We're going to do that on Zoom. So I'm going to invite you to come into a breakout room. What you're going to see on the screen is an invitation to join a breakout room, and accept it. And then I'm going to give you 3 or 4 or 5 minutes to answer those questions. All right, let's see. So it looks like we're going to have 3 folks, and some of you will have 2, some of you will have 3. And you have to accept the invitation. A little screen's going to pop up and say, would you like to join? Hello, Shakar. So you've had a chance to talk with one or two other people about personal resilience and things that you may be doing, where you need help and support. Just want to open it up for questions. Everyone's shy? And if you're muted, it's a new thing we have to learn, is to unmute ourselves.
Beth, it's Sarah. Thanks so much. The session has been awesome. Really just what I needed. And just wanted to ask, how do we as leaders make sure that we don't inadvertently exploit our staff, because everyone's at home and everyone is not going anywhere? And so, you know, suddenly days, I know you've been sharing all of these tips and I will certainly try to follow them, but you know, there is a sense like people are working even longer hours that they may have done in the past, because for many organizations, they're under massive strain. And I just wondered how you have those conversations, both, you know, upwards and downwards to in this situation.
So let's start with at the top, because it's so important, because leaders in organizations really set the tone and set the culture. And so the first thing is, especially if an organization is not used to being virtual, or people working at home, a manager might be, well, I can't see that person, so I don't know if they're actually working, and want to do a lot of like check-in and sort of over-manage. And so what I say to managers are that you have to honor deliverables, not seat time. And that it's really unhealthy expectation to think that we're going to be sitting in our, seats for 8 hours a day or more, staring at screens, doing work and being there to answer for, like, if we're called, are you at your desk? So I think the first thing is that you need to be really clear on what the deliverables are and honor that versus being in front of your screen. You have to know that I think one of the best articles that I read about this was in the Chronicle of Philanthropy. And it was actually from talking about how, from a disaster relief perspective, a professional who works in that field who said, this is not a sprint, it's a marathon. And if you're sprinting now, in the first couple of weeks, you're gonna, if you did that in a marathon, you would throw up on your sneakers by mile 5. And and so we have to think about, this is not going to be over in a week or two. It's not like a snow day or a hurricane or a storm. This is going to be going on for a while. I know in California they're talking about, when we open up the economy, and we can't tell you when. It's not going to be like flipping a switch. Things aren't going to just go back to normal magically. It's going to be a gradual return. And so we have to be prepared to do this for the long term. And so what that means is that having our business as usual kind of high expectations of perfection and working all the time, that can't just, it's not possible. And I know, and so what's happening is, I know, and I'm not saying that what the work that the organizations are doing is not important. I know a couple weeks into this, we did a call with the World Food Organization that was in Rome, and it was just when the crisis was starting to hit in Italy, and they were scrambling because their food chain was disrupted. They couldn't get food to people, and everybody, 200 people working at headquarters, were working from home, and they weren't used to it, and it was this catastrophe unfolding. But they were focused on kind of going slow to go fast. So thinking about, how can we make the shift? How can we do this strategically? And then what do we need to do to also, while we're working in this crisis, to take care of ourselves and to find relief? I just read an article, a post in my hour of allotted time. I have been reading personal essays from doctors in this crisis. And one was, it actually made me cry, of writing about his experience volunteering in the emergency room in New York. And, and so many people, just patients dying and not being able to help them, and not, and even having experience working as an ER doctor where you do see horrible things, but he is not used to seeing it at the scale and unrelenting, and that what they're doing for first, for workers that are healthcare workers that are on the front lines, there's trauma specialists that are working with them, because if you can assume, you can actually, if you are not directly impacted, you can assume the trauma of the people you're trying to serve. So it's more important than ever, especially if your organization is trying, to get essential services and resources to people that are being highly impacted by this, that you also think about taking care of yourselves, because it's not selfish. It's helping you be able to do this for the long haul. I don't know if that answers your question. And the other thing, managing up from people who are, and I've heard a lot of this too, from people who aren't the managers, but they're saying, my manager has all these expectations and they're holding me to these deadlines, and I can't even concentrate, and I'm stressed, and and especially like parents with young children who are juggling, having a 3 and a 5-year-old while they're trying to work, and they're not used to that. I really think that there needs to be check-ins with managers, and the most important question is, how are you doing? And making sure that they're getting the resources to support them. And I'm not saying turning everything into therapy, and I'm not saying don't go soft and or don't be accountable. I'm just saying that we have to be extra human during this time. Other questions?
I have one, Beth. I know what you just said really resonated. It feels like at the beginning of this, people were, well, I certainly was thinking, I'm just working from home, but no, we're at home, stuck at home, trying to work. And I guess my question is, how would you approach a situation at work when perhaps people are not pursuing their empathy first and that extra human approach? Because I'm sure it does happen.
So are you saying that there's maybe a manager who's feeling this way, and it's an employee, or it's sort of in a person that's on a teammate, or is it is it a managing up situation, or managing across, or managing
down? I'm not thinking of an example in particular, just perhaps a conversation or a group meeting where perhaps someone is feeling like empathy isn't being put first.
Yeah, I personally, and I wrote actually a blog post about this, I think, and I've gotten pushback on it. Initially, we were doing, I was suggesting, and I was actually doing myself with the teams that I manage, we were spending, maybe 10 or 15 minutes at the beginning of a meeting, just checking in. How are you feeling? How are you coping? What are you finding difficult? What do you need to do for yourself? As time has gone on, things are shifting a bit to less on kind of dealing with the grief that we're feeling, but more like trying to encourage optimism. And that's not, optimism isn't, I need this proposal by tomorrow. Optimism is thinking about, letting off steam, thinking, what is a bright spot that you saw? What is a blessing in all of this? What is an innovative, fundraising appeal that you saw amid COVID-19? So thinking about like the light at the end of the tunnel and the things of being optimistic, or humor can help. And now we've gotten to a place with a number of organizations that I do work with regularly, teams I'm managing, where we get into the meeting, but we spend 15 minutes at the end for the check-in. We do our work, and then there's the check-in is the dessert. It's not the appetizer. And people who want to stay and talk can check in, and people who need to leave or don't feel that that's helpful, leave. So I really think that in this day, in an age of a pandemic, we really need to strengthen human connections with our teams, and I don't know what else to say to get people to realize that,
Great, thanks.
Other questions? I don't know if there's anything else in the chat. I'm just looking back.
Not on the general chat. People might have sent you something privately that I won't be able to see.
Oh, I see one here. How do you draw the line between work time and home time when we're working from home? You know what? There's a method, and it's not new. It's from the early 50s, and I've actually have used this, and I'm trying to remember actually the name of it. But again, it's having a ritual to close down your day. So I have an alarm go off at the end of my day, and that's like, okay, that's my 15-minute warning bell that I need to close down and to shift into figuring out what's for dinner, and playing with the dog, checking in with my kids, see what they need. And so I have that. And what I do is I look at where I am in something, and I write down what are my priorities for 3 top things I'm going to do tomorrow. And what do I need to think about to be able to, start my day focusing on those. And so it's having a closing the day ritual, whatever that is. Whether it's like, goodbye, computer, I'm going to hit the, button to close you down, and I'm closing down the computer. And for me, I mean, I'm not going to show you, but you can see my background. We live in a really big, 1 big room space, 4 of us. We have small bedrooms, but this is our living space. So, and I have a little desk right here in my living room. So I actually clear off my desk. I take the computer out, and I have a little box right down here. I put everything in the box and I put it away. So it's not here while, where I can see it from the dinner table, or, or while I'm trying to watch a movie with my family, so as much as possible, create these rituals that have separations, and visually, have your space that you can like close up and put away. And it might seem like a pain, but it's part of the ritual. It's not that I leave the house and I get on the tube and I commute to work, or I walk to the office. So you're assimilating that. Did I hear someone?
Beth, sorry, I'm gonna. I don't have another question, but I just realized, and I was chatting to Colleen about it in our breakout group, it just dawned on me today that, in my natural working, I have my mailbox on every single device. So even though I can shut down my computer, I never get away from it, because it's pinging on my phone, and it's pinging on if I'm watching a movie. And I just suddenly realized, thank you, that I just need to close those accounts on my devices, because I'm not going anywhere. And actually, all of a sudden, I can now actually get away from the office, because it feels like the office is just following me around the house. Doesn't matter where I go. If I'm sitting and watching a movie on my laptop, my mail is coming in. And so thank you so much, because it's been what a simple thing to do, and I never thought about it until today. So thank you.
Thank you. It took me 2 weeks to get to that point, because I found I had before working from home. I always done that, but because of the nature of the crisis and the fear that it was creating, at least in me, oh my God, what if I get the virus? What if my husband gets sick? What if my kids get sick? And what if there's no beds, ventilators available at the hospital? And oh my God, what about the germs? And are we going to get food? And oh my God, I have to go to the grocery store, and everybody's wearing masks, and it was just this sense of fear, and oh my God, there's no toilet paper, and and so what I did is I shut off all my notifications, and I do have this, and I actually can show you right here. I have a little charging station. You probably can't see it. It's right there next to my sanitizers, and I put the phone there, and once it goes on its little charging station, I can't touch it until I can't touch it or look at it until the next morning. And I've had to figure out new hobbies new things to do other than work. So I just saw another question pop up in the chat. How do you deal with the uncertainties of our new normal, which can include our work activities and projects? That's, you know, there's been a diagram that's been circulating on the interwebs, and it is a riff on a framework of getting out of your comfort zone in normal times and trying something new and how uncomfortable it is. And it kind of made a lot of sense to me. And it's kind of like, and it's not, it shows it as a progression, but it's not necessarily a progression. So there's the fear zone, which I just mentioned, like, am I going to get the virus? Am I going to get sick? If I get sick, will I die? Oh, you know, all of that stuff. Will there be, is there enough food? Like, you know, am I going to still have my job? You know, how am I going to pay the rent? All that stuff is in the fear zone. And then there is the learning zone, which you move into, okay, I'm learning that I need to cut off my phone after hours. I'm learning that I need to not focus so much on the virus. I need to get outside. I need to do these things for myself. So that's kind of like the learning zone. And then there's the thrive zone, which is I've accepted this, I'm working in it. Oh, wow, I've learned all these new things about working remotely, and I'm getting much better at it, and learning to deal with the situation. So we need to like think about how can we shift our mindset from fear into that learning zone and then the growth zone. You know, I have on my, when this happened, I was in the middle of like 5 or 6 face-to-face events that I was supposed to be doing. And I'm also on the board of an organization that had to go through canceling its major revenue conference. Its major revenue for the year was its annual conference. And we had to go through the painful decision, expensive decision of canceling. And I've never been to a board meeting where we're all sitting there crying. Because I know for me, this particular conference I've been to every year for 20 years. And this is the first time that I've never gone because we had to cancel it. And so we had, and so there was, as the board, the staff had to go through a lot of, you know, pain and kind of shifting. And we, as the board, we sent them a huge care package with some tequila and some snacks. And we sent flowers, and everybody on the board sat down and wrote personalized notes to each member of staff. There's 15 members on the staff, and we each wrote, each of us, 10 board members. So each staff member received in the mail a personal note from the board. So it's almost, you know, to help them through that shift. And then we did have a lot of meetings around like what's still relevant, what do we need to pivot, what can we say, you know, let go of. A lot of discussions with current funders. I mean, I was right on the cusp of publishing a white paper funded by the Gates Foundation. Right about to push the publish button, had a few more things to do, and then poof, you know, everything gets shifted. And luckily, we did a check-in with my program officer, and they were, thank God, very flexible, saying, you know, with this difficult time, you know, it's not business as usual. So yeah, so it's going through that mindset. So I just wanted, before I see that we're almost at the hour, and I know everybody's at the end of most of you are at the end of a long day. I'm just beginning. I just want you to think about just one thing that you can do for yourself to help with work-life balance, to help build your personal resilience, to help see some optimism during this crisis. If you could just think about one thing that you want to do, maybe share it in the chat if you feel inclined. What's one small thing you can do for yourself starting tomorrow that you can do to give yourself, to boost your personal resilience and help you run this marathon without throwing up on your shoes at mile 5? It's great. Remember to be grateful. Schedule quiet time during the day. I know I'm going to continue to get outside at least once a day. Focus on the positives each day. Start your day with a meditation. Watch less news, be grateful, stay positive. To be kinder to myself and others, that's a great one. Stop multitasking, to do one thing at a time. Spend more time with my daughter. Have a ritual to end the day. These are great things. They're small things. And when you do them tomorrow, reward yourself, celebrate. Thank you.